Always good to catch up with the member for Mackillop, Nick McBride. How are you, Nick?
Very well, thank you, Ricky. Great to be with you.
Now, I noticed that for the Growing SA conference, hasn't happened for a few years, the conference organised by Grain Producers SA and Livestock SA. You're the Shadow Parliamentary Secretary for Regional Engagement, and that's what you'll be doing.
I will be, and I have a number of hats on. Obviously, the member for Mackillop, which is a strong regional area that represents and part of the Limestone Coast. And obviously, I also have my personal interests that I also take a strong interest in as well. So hopefully we can do and enjoy everything we can about this Growing SA conference. And I hope that people who do and make the time for this get as much out of it as they possibly can.
Now, I note that Wayne the Flowman was out in the electorate not long ago, and we always like keeping our ear to the ground. Just how is the season looking for your farmers in that electorate?
Oh, look, it's been good. I think it's been a cold, dryish winter, and for some of our wet areas, that's been welcome. For some of the higher, drier, sandier country, they probably would have appreciated more rainfall through June and July. But what has happened is that we've had a good August. The rains are still coming. I was fortunate enough just recently, Ricky, to do a trip over to the East Coast on a motorbike and did about 4,000 kilometres and saw a lot of countryside. South Australia has some of the best crops that I saw. In fact, on the East Coast, they're very, very good where they're not suffering from over waterlogging. There's a lot of bare paddocks that haven't even been planted. And the Riverina was an exceptionally good area as well. The Mallee area of Victoria was probably a little bit suffering, but once you hit Murrayville and came back through Pinaroo, Bordertown, Mundalla, and obviously I've been down through the wet areas like the Millicent Flats, our region is looking picture perfect at the moment, Ricky, and I'm hoping that the season continues on that way and we'll have a really good harvest and spring for all those who are involved in the cropping exercise.
I'm fascinated about this motorcycle trip, Nick, through the Riverina and other areas. What were you riding?
Oh, look, I've got a little 800 BMW that's nearly 12, 13, 14 years old, and I took off for a little bit of a getaway and clear the head. And I went and saw friends and family over on the East Coast. Probably had to do it in too much of a rush. I did it in 5 days. But I did get to see a lot, really appreciate what I did. And Jesus, I got exceptionally cold on one part of it from Pinaroo to Kingston on a Monday night in 8 degrees, and the rain never let up.
I got through the leather jacket, I suspect there, Nick.
Well, the waterproof clothes anyway, they weren't leathered.
Hey, look, when it comes to all of those conditions you've seen across multiple states, we broadcast in all of those areas you talked about, actually. When it comes to just how good the farming conditions are, yes, it's waterlogged in some parts, but still there's moisture in the soil, and that's a good thing. What are you seeing are the opportunities for farmers in your electorate in South Australia at the moment?
Look, I think that there's been a certain amount of apprehension about the cost of production, the cost of fertiliser, chemicals, diesel prices have gone up. Everyone's taken a fair punt on putting in a crop, for example, this year. And what we're now seeing is that the seasonal conditions where they've allowed are looking like they're very, very good for a good crop and yields to actually pay their way. Because we know we're talking about good prices for grains, everything from canola being $1,000 a tonne or around those sort of areas, and barley around that $300, wheat getting close to $4. And so if those sort of numbers hang around right through harvest and the yields are up, I can see that the agricultural sector that's let's say that they're acting in the cropping and grains area are going to have a very, very good year coming in the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
We'll hear from amongst many others there, Tony Marr from the National Farmers Federation, where they've got their $100 billion national production target for agriculture. But it sounds like we're going to hear a lot more also about innovation and technology that's coming through, because we always want to keep getting better and more out of the land, but also look after the land well as well.
Yes, we do. I see that there's a section there about sustainability innovation from SmartSat CRC. And what's really interesting, and this is where farmers, obviously get to hear and note a little bit of a technology that's always moving. Nothing stays still. But what's most important in this area is what's relevant, Ricky. How can we use this? How does it help us? And we're not actually just turning up to spend our money when not getting a return for that investment. And I think these sort of days are where they've, it's got to be clearly explained, clearly highlighted, and hopefully talks about the economic returns that the new technology and innovations that are either with us today or could be with us tomorrow.
Well, these days, for instance, the satellite technology farmers are able to use to GPS and position their machinery, it's very different to not that long ago. The deployment, timeline is a lot quicker now with some of that new ag tech.
Oh, certainly, Ricky. One of the things I think with technology, and particularly the grain sector, has seen probably greater movements and perhaps better returns on investment thus far compared to the livestock industries. But certainly the grains, with their efficiency, their measurement, being able to put the chemical and fertilisers out nearly per hectare rather than per paddock, is those sort of efficiencies is where they need to be when you're talking about nitrogen was up over around that $1,600 a tonne. I think it's softened a great deal just recently, and fertilisers, other fertilisers, MAP and DAP, were up around that $1,000 a tonne, and chemicals have all gone up in price. Obviously, the more efficient, the more effective these grain growers are, the more profitable they'll be in the long run. And this is where technology does help with rising costs of production that we're seeing just recently.
And naturally, you'll be there and interested to hear what's happening from the your Shadow Minister, Nicola Senafati, for primary industries, but also the Minister herself, Claire Scriven, will be there. You'll be listening to that presentation closely?
I will be, and a couple of things that will come to note there that I hope that she'll touch. This is the Minister for Agricultural Primary Industries, the Honourable Claire Scriven. Obviously, electronic identification and the National Livestock Identification Scheme that's been proposed for sheep and goats, where our government's sitting with this, why they're going to join that if that is the case, and how will it benefit the industry. And I'm very wary of this type of technology and recording of animals. One, it does have some benefits. I'm not sure that it has all the benefits that some of the cost of roll out such these schemes. I know that the sale yard system's very concerned about the cost of managing these types of systems. And then obviously that all comes back to now that new threat of foot and mouth disease, and hopefully we'll hear a little about what the government is doing in this area, what sort of quarantine measures they're putting in place, how they think they're working. Now we're seeing a dog at the Adelaide airport. I've recognised and heard that, not only do we have to worry about our footwear, but the greatest threat is this importation of any sort of food product from overseas, from these countries that do have foot and mouth, and that now includes Indonesia. So it'll be interesting to see where the government is in this area, how they think they're doing it, and hopefully we'll hear some sort of review of that sort of process.
All right, Nick McBride, enjoy your time at the Growing SA conference, and we will listen very closely to what the Primary Industries Minister, Claire Scriven, has to say. Thanks for joining us here today.
As always, Ricky, a pleasure.